In this video, we'll learn how to set up and use the example sketch files that come with a user-contributed library in p5js. So I've already spent some time here in my web editor downloading and installing the clickable user-contributed library. As you can see here, I've got a libraries folder. I've uploaded both my regular library JavaScript file and the min version, and I've linked those into my sketch with a scripts tag in my index.html. So back in Sketch, I've spent a little bit of time sort of bumbling through the documentation for this library, figuring out some of the basic functionality, and that's a perfectly fine way to learn how to use a user-contributed library. So you can see here I can click the button and I get some interaction. The fact is, many libraries come with example files which are ready-made, and that's another great way to dive in and start figuring out how library functions and objects work. So let's go ahead and go into our sketch files. If you don't see this column on the left, you may need to click the arrow that's normally underneath the play button and expand that. So we're going to take this original sketch.js file, and that's where most of our P5 code is going to live in our sketches. So I'm going to click the drop down next to that, and let's rename this. And I'm going to call this old-sketch.js. And so that renaming step is enough to get P5 to ignore that file. And we'll replace it with the sketch.js from one of our example files that corresponds to this library that we've installed. I'll go ahead and save. Let's go ahead and check out our downloads folder. So we already went through the steps of downloading the clickable user-contributed library, extracting it into a regular folder, and we went through and uploaded our library files from the library folder. Now we've also got this example folder here. So this has a full-fledged example sketch that makes use of that library for some buttons. So what I want to do here is take this sketch.js, upload it into my sketch that I've already started, and play around with that code, see how it behaves. So back in my browser, let's go up to Sketch Files, click the drop down next to Sketch Files, and upload a file. So I'll bring up my downloads folder, just click and drag that sketch.js. You can see now I've uploaded that into my sketch files. So I'll click on it from the sketch files column, and now when I play, I'm expecting to see something, but let's check the console and see what's going on. Oh, sure enough, I'm getting an error, and this is something that happens really commonly in P5. Our first step when something goes wrong like this is to read the error. So I see p5js says, looks like there was a problem loading your image. Aha, so it's looking for an image called logo.png. I haven't uploaded that. My guess is there's probably a file called logo.png that was in that examples folder that we need to upload. So let's go ahead and see if we can upload another file. And yep, sure enough, here is my logo.png right inside that example folder. So just click and drag right there. And let's try to play this one more time. Okay, so all kinds of fantastic buttons here. That's great, and I can start to play around with this, see what happens, and then sort of start to reverse engineer the code. So in general, when I'm doing something like this, looking through an example file, trying to figure out how a library works, I'll start by looking at the variables that the developer has set up, usually at the top of the file, and then just sort of search through the file. So for example, I could take a look at this click1, and I can see right down here they're setting that up as a new clickable object. So that's going to be some sort of a button somewhere in the code. And from there, I can click on Edit, Find, and I can search for occurrences of click1 so I can go through the code and see where that variable is. You can see there it's being instanced as a new clickable object, setting a location, setting up a function for some reactions when we hover over with the mouse, and then a function for when it's not hovered. So you get the idea here. I'm searching through the code, seeing what happens with this variable, also taking the time to read the comments. So those are really crucial pieces of information to start to figure out how all these things work together. From there, I can go ahead and start to play with some of these settings. I can also bring up the reference page for this library and compare and contrast the techniques that the developer is using in the example to what's in the documentation. Okay, that is how to install and test an example file that comes with a user-contributed library in p5js.